I paid $50,000 for my mother's 70th birthday gala at the St. Regis, and she banished my 8-year-old son and 10-year-old daughter to a wobbly table next to a trash can for my sister's arrogant friends. "Make room for the important guests," she sneered. "Ignore my crying kids." My son hid the birthday card he made for her. I didn't scream or make a scene. I walked straight to the event coordinator holding the final invoice and smiled. No one realized the absolute massacre I was about to order. My 8-year-old son Noah was still holding the birthday card when they moved him. Crayon flowers. His name spelled out in purple glitter on the back flap. 3 days he'd been working on it. Sitting at the kitchen table after school with his tongue poking out the side of his mouth, the way he does when he's concentrating hard on something that matters to him. He'd asked Sarah what Grandma's favorite color was. He'd asked me how to spell beautiful. He'd sealed it shut with a sticker shaped like a star. He was holding it with both hands when my mother pointed at him and said, "Move. Important guests need those seats." Not sweetie. Not excuse me, love. Just move. I was 30 feet away when it happened, standing near the bar pretending to look at the menu card. I heard it anyway. The acoustics in the grand ballroom at the St. Regis are extraordinary. My mother had insisted on that particular feature when we were touring venues back in March. "I want everyone to hear every word I say, Kenneth." She'd said it like it was a joke. It wasn't. Noah looked up at her. His face did that thing children's faces do right before they decide whether to cry. A kind of slow interior collapse. Then my 10-year-old Emily reached over without a word and took his hand. She was wearing the blue dress she'd picked out herself. She'd been proud of that dress. She pulled her little brother away from the VIP table, away from the chandeliers and the white roses, past the string quartet, past the champagne towers, and they walked together to the far back corner of the room, next to the kitchen service exit, next to the trash cans. I stood there for a moment with a glass of sparkling water in my hand and watched my children sit down in the shadows of a party I had entirely paid for. The venue, the flowers, the custom menu, the band, the photography, the cake imported from a patisserie in Lyon, France, and I felt something happen inside my chest. Not hot, not explosive. It was more like a temperature dropping, a slow, total stillness, the kind that comes just before something freezes solid. My wife Sarah found me about 90 seconds later. She'd seen it from the other side of the room. She touched my arm. I didn't look at her. I was already looking at Clarissa Fontaine, the St. Regis event coordinator, standing near the kitchen entrance with her tablet and her headset and her practiced smile. "Kenneth," Sarah said quietly. "That was all." "I know," I said. I set down the sparkling water and walked toward Clarissa. "I should tell you what the evening was supposed to be. My mother, Dolores Miller, turned 70 in May. Dolores is a woman who has spent her entire adult life defining herself through the performances of other people. When my sister Brenda got a B+ on a 5th grade science project, our mother kept the paper in a frame for 3 years. When I graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown with a finance degree, she told the neighbors I'd gone to a school in DC. When Brenda spent 2 years in Thailand finding herself on my parents' credit cards, my mother told people Brenda was doing international consulting. She has always had a gift for editing reality into something more favorable to her preferred narrative. I knew all of this. I had known it for 38 years. And still, when my mother said she wanted a grand 70th birthday gala at the St. Regis in downtown Chicago, I said yes. Because I am, by both training and temperament, a problem solver. I see a need, I assess the resources, I fill the gap. It's how I made partner at my firm at 34. It's how I've managed to stay functional through years of a family dynamic that a therapist once described with clinical precision as a closed system designed to reward dysfunction. Her name was Dr. Patricia Osei-Mensah. She had her PhD from Northwestern and a framed photo of James Baldwin on her wall. She had been my therapist for 2 years, and she had told me on more than one occasion that my compulsive need to solve my family's financial crises was a highly sophisticated form of self-punishment. I'd nodded. I'd said I understood. I'd written my mother another check. The gala was going to cost $50,000. I knew that going in. Venue rental, catering for 120 guests, open premium bar, the floral installation my mother had selected from a portfolio on the event coordinator's iPad, white roses and gardenias at $4,800 just for the centerpiece arrangements, custom menu designed by the hotel's executive chef, a 7-piece jazz band, a dessert station with a French patisserie setup, Wagyu beef, poached Maine lobster, Dom Perignon. I put $50,000 on a wire transfer and did not mention it to Brenda or my parents. My mother knew, of course. You don't plan an event like this without the person paying for it, but she had never once, in the 4 months of planning, said the words thank you. Not when I confirmed the deposit, not when I walked through the tasting menu with her, not when I FedExed her the invitation proof so she could approve the gold foil lettering. At the time, I told myself it didn't matter. I know now that it did, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My sister Brenda is 4 years younger than me. She is also the single most expensive person in my life, and I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean it in the precise ledger-level sense of the word. For the last 5 years, since Brenda's interior design firm collapsed under the weight of, depending on who you ask, bad luck or bad faith or both, I have paid her rent on a 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park. I have covered her car note on a 2022 Audi Q5. I have serviced 2 credit cards that between them carry a balance I don't want to name in polite company. I have wired money for emergencies that come with remarkable consistency every 3rd month. Health things, apartment things, situations. In 5 years, years, Brenda has not held a single paying job. In 5 years, Brenda has launched 3 business ideas, each of which required startup capital from me, none of which resulted in a functioning business. In 5 years, Brenda has thanked me exactly twice, once at Christmas when she was drunk and once via text message that appeared to have been sent to the wrong person because it said thanks again, you're a lifesaver K, and then immediately followed up with sorry, that was for someone else. I had a manila folder at home that my accountant, Marcus Webb, CPA, 22 years in practice, the kind of man who speaks exclusively in declarative sentences, had prepared for me at my request 6 months earlier. Marcus had been doing my personal and business accounting since I made partner. He is not a man given to alarm, but when I'd asked him to compile everything I'd spent on Brenda over 5 years, he'd set the printed sheet on his desk, looked at me over his reading glasses, and said, "Kenneth, this is not a family. This is a business arrangement in which only one party is aware they're in business." The number at the bottom of that sheet was $341,000. I had not shown it to anyone except Sarah, who had looked at it for a long time, and then said quietly, "You know this has to stop." She was right. I had known it had to stop. I just hadn't yet found the moment, the occasion, the right configuration of events that would make stopping feel possible without detonating the entire family structure. It turned out the moment was going to find me. Brenda arrived at the St. Regis gala at 7:22 p.m., 22 minutes after the cocktail hour began. She did not arrive alone. She walked in through the grand entrance with 4 people I had never seen in my life, 2 men and 2 women, all of them in designer clothes. 1 woman in what looked like a Valentino gown, 1 man in a custom suit with no tie, the kind of casual luxury that costs more than formal luxury. They moved through the room like they owned it, which is a thing Brenda has always been extraordinarily good at projecting, the absolute, unquestioning confidence of someone who has never had to worry about the bill. I heard her before I fully processed what I was seeing. "Mom, my investors need the good seats." Brenda said it loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear, arm extended toward the VIP arrangement near the head of the room. The tables with the roses, the champagne service, the better sightlines. The tables I had specified for family. My mother didn't blink. She waved a hand at the family section like she was waving away cigarette smoke, and the seating reshuffled. Brenda's investors, people whose last names I didn't know, whose faces I'd never seen, who had no relationship to my mother beyond apparently knowing Brenda, settled into the chairs with the gardenias and the Dom Perignon. My parents' oldest friends got quietly nudged to the secondary tables. My father's brother and his wife moved without complaint, because that family has always moved without complaint when Brenda requires the better seats. And my children, who had been sitting at the family table where I had placed them 2 hours earlier, got up and walked to the corner. I stood near the back wall for approximately 3 minutes. I am not, by nature, an impulsive person. My professional life requires the ability to absorb bad information without reacting visibly. I have sat across a table from counterparties who were trying to take apart deals I'd spent 18 months building, and I have kept my face perfectly neutral and my voice perfectly calm. It is a learned skill, and I am good at it. What I felt in those 3 minutes was not impulsive. It was the opposite. It was the feeling of a decision that had already been made somewhere below conscious thought, surfacing slowly and completely, the way a very large object rises from very deep water. Not fast, not dramatic, just inevitable. I found Clarissa Fontaine near the kitchen entrance at 7:31 p.m. She was holding her tablet with both hands and smiling the professional smile of someone who has managed 50 events exactly like this one. She had a headset with a small black mic. She was wearing a St. Regis lapel pin. She had introduced herself to me 5 months ago when we'd toured the venue. Clarissa Fontaine, senior events coordinator, 11 years with the property, and she had been the single most competent person involved in the planning of this evening. "Mr. Miller," she tilted her tablet toward me with the ease of long practice. "Just need your signature for the dessert buffet and band overtime. We're right on schedule. Everything is looking gorgeous." I leaned close enough that the nearest guest couldn't hear me over the jazz. "Clarissa," I said, "I need you to do exactly what I say." Her smile shifted, just slightly, a small recalibration. She had been doing this job for 11 years. She recognized a change in the weather. "Of course," she said. "Kill the open bar. Cash only, starting immediately. The per drink price goes on the board by the bar station." I paused to let that land. "Cancel the dessert station. Tell them to break it down quietly. Tell the band their set ends in 10 minutes. I watched her face. "The Wagyu and lobster plates that are being staged right now, stop them. Put them back. Replace them with the garden salads from the secondary menu." I paused again. "If any plates are already on a table, retrieve them." Clarissa went very still. The smile was gone. "Sir," her voice was careful, precise. "Some of the plates have already been placed. Guests are eating." "I know," I said. "That's the point." She looked at me for a moment. Event coordinators at 5-star hotels develop a particular kind of radar for the difference between a guest who is making a scene and a guest who is executing a plan. Clarissa had that radar. "This is your event," she said. "Your name is on the contract." "Yes," I said. She picked up her radio. I handed her my card, walked past the bar, and stepped up to the stage. My mother was already at the microphone. She had the glass in her hand, the pearls at her throat, the expression of someone who has been waiting their entire life for this particular moment and has finally arrived at it. 70 years old. The St. Regis Grand Ballroom. 120 people in their best clothes. She was incandescent. "We are a family of class," she announced to the room. Her voice carried perfectly in in those extraordinary acoustics of loyalty, of success. I walked up the 3 steps to the stage. She saw me coming and laughed, the nervous laugh of someone who doesn't understand what's happening but is certain it fits into the evening's program. "Kenneth, sweetie, not yet. The toast is still." I took the microphone from her hand, not roughly, not dramatically, just firmly, the way you take something that belongs to the situation. She stopped laughing. The room went quiet, the way rooms go quiet when something shifts from performance to reality. The string of murmur died. Forks stopped moving. 200 eyes turned to the stage. "I know, Mom." My voice moved through the ballroom like it was the most natural thing in the world. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. I had been a litigator's opposing counsel often enough to know that the voice that sounds like it has nothing to prove is the most dangerous voice in any room. But since we're talking about loyalty, I need to make an announcement. The silence deepened. I paid for everything you're looking at tonight. I didn't gesture. I didn't need to. Every flower, every bottle of wine, every plate of lobster my sister's friends are eating. I let my eyes find Brenda's table. She still had a fork in her hand. One of her investors, the woman in the Valentino gown, had stopped eating and was watching me with a carefully neutral expression. 2 hours ago, my son sat down at the family table with a birthday card he had spent 3 days making for his grandmother. My daughter was with him. They were moved to a folding table next to the kitchen trash cans to make room for people I have never met. A sound moved through the room. Not quite a gasp, more like the collective intake of breath before a gasp. My mother's hand closed on my arm. "Kenneth, stop this right now. You are embarrassing us." Sitting my children next to a trash can was embarrassing, I said, not looking at her. "This is just the bill coming due." I looked out at the room. My father's face, which had gone a particular shade of purple I recognized from childhood. My parents' friends, some of them people I'd known since I was Noah's age. Brenda's investors, who were beginning to understand they'd walked into something they had not been briefed on. My son Noah in the back corner, his birthday card now in his lap, watching me with his mouth slightly open. I looked at Clarissa and nodded. The band stopped. Every instrument at once, mid-phrase. A sudden silence that felt like a dropped glass. The warm amber light in the ballroom snapped to harsh white. The work lights, Clarissa had called them during our planning walkthrough, used for setup and breakdown. The room looked different under work lights. Smaller, realer. And then the kitchen doors opened. They came out in a line. 6 servers moving in the practiced, coordinated way that the St. Regis trains its staff to move, brisk and efficient and completely without apology. They moved straight to the VIP section, to Brenda's table, to the tables around it, and they reached past the guests without ceremony and pulled the plates. The Wagyu, the lobster. A server lifted the Dom Perignon from Brenda's ice bucket, replaced it with a glass pitcher of water, and set the bottle on his tray. The woman in the Valentino gown pushed her chair back. "What is wrong with you?" Brenda's voice cracked across the ballroom. She was on her feet. She had the expression of someone experiencing a reality that doesn't compute. "You can't do this. The host has downgraded the menu package," the lead server said. His voice was calm and professionally loud. Clarissa had briefed him well. "The cash bar is open at the back of the room. A full bar menu is available at standard pricing." The ballroom erupted, not into shouting, into the sound of 120 people processing something at once. Chairs, whispers, someone's wine glass tipped, and I heard it hit the floor. My father came out of his chair. His face had passed purple and was heading somewhere else. "You ungrateful little—" "I paid for what was necessary," I said into the microphone. My voice was completely steady. "Nothing more. The show is over." I set the microphone on the stand, walked off the stage, went directly to the back corner of the ballroom. Noah looked up at me from the folding table. His eyes were too wide and a little wet, but he hadn't cried. He's his mother's son in that way. That stubborn refusal to give anyone the satisfaction. The birthday card was still in his hands. In the chaos of the room behind me, with my mother's voice rising and Brenda's investors standing up from the table, and the servers clearing glasses with methodical efficiency, my 8-year-old son was holding his crayon flowers and his purple glitter and his star sticker, and looking at me with an expression I will carry for the rest of my life. Emily was beside him, straight-backed, hand on her brother's arm, the blue dress she'd chosen herself still perfect. I pulled out the folding chair across from them, sat down. "You okay?" I asked. "What's happening?" Noah asked. "The party's ending a little early," I said. "Let's go get pizza." He thought about this. "Real pizza? Not the fancy kind?" "Real pizza. The kind that comes in a box." He stood up, put the birthday card in my jacket pocket, folded carefully so the glitter side faced in, took my hand. Emily took my other hand. We walked through the ballroom, through the noise and the disruption, and my mother's voice somewhere behind me calling my name with the particular register she'd used since I was a child when I had done something she couldn't immediately fix, and out the double doors into the cool May air of Michigan Avenue. The city was right there, the way cities always are, indifferent and enormous and lit up, ongoing, traffic, people walking, a couple arguing in front of the hotel next door. Everything happening at exactly the same pace it had been happening before I took that microphone. My phone buzzed in my pocket as we reached the car. I felt it. I didn't take it out. Noah was talking about what kind of pizza, and Emily was telling him he always got the wrong kind, and Sarah was unlocking the car and looking at me over the roof with an expression I recognized. Not relief, not quite, but the particular look she gets when something she has been waiting for has finally happened. I put the kids in the back seat, buckled them in the way you still have to with 8-year-olds, even when they insist they can do it themselves. My phone buzzed again and again. We were 11 minutes down the road. Noah Noah already deep into an argument about whether pineapple was legitimate when I finally looked at my phone. 47 messages. Missed calls from numbers I recognized. My father, my aunt, my parents' neighbor who had been at the gala and had apparently left in something of a hurry. 11 texts from Brenda. Escalating incoherence from "you humiliated me in front of my investors" to "you are literally insane" to a string of things I won't reproduce here. One message from my mother. My mother does not text. She considers texting beneath her dignity and has said so explicitly on multiple occasions. I have received approximately 6 text messages from her in my entire adult life, all of them logistical and brief. The reservation is at 7. Your father has the address. That kind of thing. This one was different. I read it twice in the parking lot of the pizza place while Sarah took the kids inside. Then I called Marcus Webb. It was 9:14 p.m. on a Saturday. Marcus answered on the second ring, because Marcus has been doing this long enough to know that when a client calls on a Saturday night, it isn't social. The message from my mother. I said, "I need you to be awake." "I'm awake," Marcus said. "Send it." What my mother had sent was not an apology. What it was, in substance. And Marcus confirmed this at 11:20 that same night after I forwarded it, along with 3 additional documents that Brenda had apparently sent to my mother in the preceding 48 hours, was a confession. Not intentional, not written for my eyes. Written by a woman who, in the shock and fury of a public humiliation, had abandoned the careful accounting she'd been keeping for nearly 2 years and sent me, apparently thinking she was sending it to my aunt, a text that contained the following information. Brenda had not, as she had told me repeatedly, lost her interior design firm due to market conditions and a difficult business climate. Brenda had been operating a fraudulent consulting arrangement since the business closed, billing clients for work completed by subcontractors she never paid, collecting deposits she never refunded, and using a secondary LLC registered in Indiana under a different name to receive the funds. My mother had known, more than known. According to the message and the 3 forwarded documents from Brenda that my mother had included in her forward chain, my mother had been actively helping Brenda redirect clients who called complaining, had coached Brenda on how to document the LLC so it would pass basic inspection, and had, in my mother's own words, made sure Kenneth would never think to look because he trusts us. I sat in a pizza place parking lot in the dark and read that sentence 3 times. He trusts us. Past tense. Marcus called me back at 11:47 with his first assessment. "Kenneth, I need you to understand that this isn't just family drama. Depending on the amounts involved and the state lines crossed with that Indiana LLC, this is potentially federal wire fraud territory. This is not something I can fully assess alone. You need to get David on the phone. David Reinhold is my attorney. He has been my attorney for 9 years, ever since I made partner, and my compensation structure required someone with his specific combination of corporate and litigation experience. He is the kind of man who, when you describe a legal situation to him, makes the particular sound of someone who has been waiting for exactly this problem to walk through his door." I called David at 11:52. He made that sound. "Forward everything you have," he said. "Don't talk to your mother. Don't talk to Brenda. Don't talk to your father. Tomorrow morning 9 a.m. We'll talk. I'm going to make some calls tonight." "What kind of calls?" I asked. "The kind," David said, "that you make when you want to know exactly how much rope someone has been given." The following 8 weeks were among the quietest and most methodical of my life. David Reinhold contacted a colleague named Sandra Park, a federal fraud specialist with a background in white-collar financial crimes. Sandra had worked 7 years as an assistant U.S. attorney before entering private practice. When David described the Indiana LLC, the billing irregularities, and the scope of the misdirection, Sandra said the words I had been half hoping I wouldn't hear: "This has federal exposure." Marcus Webb spent 3 days building a financial timeline. He was meticulous, as he always is, and what he assembled was not the work of a reckless person. Brenda had been careful. The secondary LLC was clean on the surface. The billing documentation looked credible if you didn't know where to look. What Marcus found when he looked at the right places was a pattern: specific timing, specific amounts, specific clients, that told a story you couldn't misread once you saw it whole. "She's been running this for at least 22 months, Marcus told me on a Tuesday morning, his reading glasses on, his voice absolutely flat. "The amounts I can directly document total approximately $186,000. There may be more I can't trace yet. I thought about the $341,000 I had given her over 5 years. I thought about the fact that she had apparently not needed it, or had needed it for reasons that had nothing to do with the reasons she'd told me." "How much overlap," I asked Marcus, "between the fraud timeline and the month she was asking me for money?" Marcus looked at his spreadsheet. "Complete," he said. 100%. The formal complaint was filed in July by 3 former clients of Brenda's, people who had been trying to recover their deposits through civil court for almost a year and had run into the same maze of misdirection and dissolved entities that Marcus had untangled. Sandra Park connected them with a federal contact. The case moved quickly from there, in the way federal cases move when the documentation is clean and the paper trail is cooperative. On a Wednesday morning in late July, 2 agents from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division arrived at Brenda's Lincoln Park apartment. I know this because Brenda called me from the hallway outside her door, voice at a pitch I had never heard from her before, asking me to tell her this was connected to a misunderstanding. I was in my office. I had a 10 a.m. conference call. "Brenda," I said, "I need you to call a lawyer." "Kenneth?" "A lawyer." I said. That's the only advice I have for you. I hung up, sat for a moment looking at my phone. Then I picked it up again and called my children's school to check on an unrelated enrollment matter, because life moves forward and there were things that still needed doing. My father called me once in August. He was calling from his car. I could hear the road noise, and he had clearly been thinking about what he wanted to say for some time, because it came out structured in a way his conversations with me rarely are. You didn't have to do it the way you did it, he said, in front of all those people. No, I said, I didn't. Then why? I thought about Noah's face on the walk to the folding table, the way he held Emily's hand, the birthday card he'd sealed with a star sticker, the shadow by the trash cans. Because I wanted everyone in that room to know exactly what this family decided to do when it thought no one important was watching, I said. And I wanted my kids to see that someone thought they were important. He didn't say anything for a moment. That's not how family works, he finally said. I know, I said. That's what I've been trying to tell you. My mother's message to the family, distributed via email in September, I received it secondhand from my cousin, was, characteristically, a work of selective editing. It described the events at the St. Regis as a misunderstanding that had been blown out of proportion by parties interested in causing division. It did not mention the federal fraud investigation. It did not mention the $341,000. It did not mention the Indiana LLC or the clients who had been defrauded or the 22 months of documentation that Sandra Park and the federal investigators were by then moving through with considerable efficiency. It did mention that I had embarrassed the family in a very public way and that she hoped for reconciliation in time. I read it once. Then I went into the kitchen, where Noah was at the table doing his homework and Emily was eating an apple and reading a book, and I put my phone face down on the counter and made dinner. The case against Brenda concluded in a federal plea agreement in late winter. I won't give you all the details. Some of them remain in process, and some of them are not mine to give. What I can tell you is that the agreement involved restitution to the defrauded clients, supervised probation, and a permanent bar from operating any financial services or consulting business in Illinois or Indiana. Sandra Park described the outcome to David Reinhold as proportionate. David relayed this to me with the dry satisfaction of a man whose read on a situation has been confirmed. I have not spoken to Brenda since July. I have not spoken to my mother since the night of the gala. I have spoken to my father once, briefly, in October. He called to tell me that he understood, in some way, why I had done what I did. He said it carefully, the way men of his generation say things that cost them something. I told him I appreciated it. We didn't say much else. It was not a reconciliation. It was a small, honest exchange between two people who have never known quite how to be honest with each other. It was more than I expected. In March, Noah's class had a family heritage project. Each kid was supposed to bring something that represented their family. Noah brought a copy of the birthday card, not the original, which I'd kept, but one he'd remade at home. Same design, same glitter, same star sticker on the back. He'd made it smaller so it fit in his backpack. His teacher, Ms. Carver, called me that afternoon. He presented it to the class, she said. He said it was the most important thing his family had made this year. He said it stood for when his dad showed up. I was sitting in my car in a parking garage when she called. I had been on the phone for 3 hours with a complex deal that had a very short window and multiple moving parts, and I was tired in the specific way that comes from sustained concentration, and I had been thinking about nothing for several hours except interest rate structures and counterparty risk. I did not say anything for a moment. Thank you for telling me, I said. Of course, she said. I just thought you'd want to know. There's a thing that happens in families like mine, and they are not rare, whatever we tell ourselves, where the roles become so calcified, so long practiced, that the people inside them can't imagine the structure being any other way. The provider provides, the taker takes, the mediators mediate, the enablers smooth, and everyone performs their part so consistently that the whole system starts to feel like nature, like gravity, like just the way things are. It isn't. It's a choice, made over and over, usually in the small moments, the quiet ones, the moments when you could say something and don't, or do something and decide not to, or see your 8-year-old son being walked to a folding chair next to a trash can and tell yourself it's probably fine. He'll be okay. Don't make a scene. I made a scene. I'm not sure scene is the right word, actually. What I did was name something true in a room full of people who had agreed, for a very long time, not to name it. The discomfort that followed was not the discomfort of cruelty. It was the discomfort of a thing being called by its correct name for the first time. That's not comfortable. It wasn't supposed to be. The birthday card, the original, with the crayon flowers and the purple glitter and the star sticker, is framed on the wall of my office now. It's between my Georgetown diploma and a photo from the day I made partner. Clients ask about it sometimes. They assume it's a piece of artwork. I tell them it's the most important document in the room. Most of them laugh. They think I'm being modest or sentimental. I'm not. It's a record of what my son believed about his grandmother on the day he learned he was wrong. It's a record of the 3 days he spent making something beautiful for someone who pointed at him and said move. And it's a record of the moment after that, the moment that mattered, his sister taking his hand, the two of them walking together, the decision not to cry. And eventually, pizza in a box. The kind that comes in a box. Noah still talks about that pizza. He's told the story to at least 4 of his friends. In his version, it's the best pizza he's ever eaten, the best night of his year, maybe his life. He's added details over the months. There was apparently a dog outside inside the restaurant, a very good dog, and the pizza has grown in retrospect to something almost legendary. I don't correct him. Some things deserve to be remembered bigger than they were.